The birth of the communal apartment. The story of the Soviet communal apartment begins after the revolution of 1917. Cities were overcrowded, and the new government introduced a bold policy. Large, pre-revolutionary apartments would now be shared by several families at once. Rooms that once belonged to merchants, engineers, or professors were divided with wooden partitions. A dining hall could become 3 separate bedrooms. Families who had never met were suddenly thrown together, navigating shared kitchens, hallways, and bathrooms. Most believed it would be temporary, weeks, months, maybe a year. But temporary stretched into decades, and entire generations grew up knowing only communal life. When we first moved in, it felt like stepping into another world. Everyone was a stranger, and yet we had to learn to live together immediately, recalls Lydia. Moscow, 1952. Some families brought furniture, some only a few personal belongings. Children's laughter echoed in empty halls. But so did the first quarrels over space, food, and schedules. The first night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound was a new surprise. Someone moving, a door slamming, a kettle boiling. Remembers Ivan, Leningrad, 1953. Everyday architecture of shared living. Walking into a communal apartment was like entering a small society. Long corridors ran the length of the building, with doors lined up like cabins on a ship. Each door opened to a family's room, filled with furniture, suitcases, and belongings stacked high. The kitchen was the heart of the apartment. Families kept their own stoves, shelves, and labeled containers for flour, sugar, and oil. Signs of daily life were everywhere. A pot of soup simmering, bread cooling on the table, tea in enamel mugs. Bathrooms were shared, and schedules dictated who could bathe or do laundry. A single hallway telephone served dozens of families, ringing for whoever could answer first. Every corner of our room held memories of someone else. It was tight, but it taught us to care for each other, remembers Alexei. Moscow, 1964. Thin walls transmitted every sound. Quiet conversations became public knowledge. Children's laughter, arguments, whispers, and the hum of radios created a continuous soundtrack. Privacy existed only outside, on the street. Sometimes I preferred to walk outside at night just to feel a little privacy, adds Marina, Leningrad, 1960. The kitchen, heart of the communal world. The kitchen was more than a place to cook. It was where life truly unfolded. Early in the morning, the first residents shuffled in with tea kettles. Stoves were lit, water boiled, and the smells of buckwheat, cabbage soup, and frying onions filled the air. Disagreements were common. A pot left on the stove too long, spilled milk, or someone taking extra time to cook could ignite tension. But the kitchen was also a place of warmth. Neighbors shared stories, celebrated birthdays, and comforted each other in times of hardship. Birthdays turned the small space into a festive room, with newspapers on the table and a shared cake in the center. We were all different families, but in the kitchen, it felt like one big home, says Evgenia Kazan, 1961. Patience, diplomacy, and negotiation were learned here. Your reputation in the apartment often depended on how you behaved in the kitchen. I remember teaching my children to wait their turn for tea. Even small manners mattered here, recalls Olga Moscow. 1965. Conflicts, rules, and unspoken agreements. Shared living produced both unity and friction. Residents developed an informal constitution rules, never written but strictly followed. Do not make noise after 10 at night. Do not leave dishes unwashed. Do not take someone else's place on the windowsill. Do not borrow food. Do not occupy the bathroom longer than necessary. Conflicts arose over trivial matters: laundry lines, stove use, bathroom schedules, or whose turn it was to clean. Sometimes complaints escalated to the housing committee or even the police. One neighbor complained I dried laundry over her pot. A committee came and wrote it down. We laughed later, but at the time it felt serious, recalls Valentina. Moscow, 1957. Life required constant adaptation. Residents learned to anticipate moods, adjust schedules, and coexist peacefully, despite tensions, is greater than, if you wanted peace, you had to know who could shout and who would leave you alone, remembers Dmitry. Leningrad, 1962. Life behind thin walls. Privacy was rare. When a child cried, the entire apartment knew. Couples whispering could still be overheard. Radios, doors, and footsteps created a continuous flow of shared life. Thin walls also spread stories. People knew who received letters, who fought with whom, and who had good or bad news. I didn't see my neighbor for years, yet I knew when her son got sick or when someone found a new job, says Nina Leningrad. 1958. Some found comfort in this closeness. Others felt trapped. Almost everyone agreed. Communal life left no place for secrets. Even small arguments became community news. Adds Sergei. Moscow, 1960. Moments of solidarity. Communal living fostered mutual support. If a child fell ill, neighbors spoke quietly. If a family lacked sugar or salt, someone offered theirs. Weddings turned corridors into celebrations, with residents carrying chairs, dishes, and blankets. Even neighbors who rarely interacted came together in hardship, illness, loss, or emergencies. Even those I barely knew were the first to help when my father fell ill. That was the real heart of the communal apartment, recalls Tatiana. Sverdlovsk, 1966. These moments reminded everyone that living together wasn't only about conflict, it was about shared humanity. We learned to live and care for each other in ways you can't in a private home. Notes Irina, Moscow, 1964. The psychology of living together. Communal apartments shaped unique social skills. People learned negotiation, compromise, and endurance. Collective responsibility developed naturally, keeping the kitchen clean, respecting schedules, sharing daily chores. Life in a communal apartment could be exhausting, but was never empty. Sounds of cooking, cleaning, conversations, and music became a living rhythm, a constant reminder of human presence. We had to live side by side and consider each other's moods. That taught me patience that I could not have learned anywhere else, remembers Igor Moscow. 1962. Love, friendship, and human stories. Close quarters nurtured relationships of all kinds. Couples fell in love across corridors, teenagers whispered in stairwells, friendships blossomed over shared meals or late-night talks. Jealousies, rivalries, and lifelong disputes often started from the smallest incident: a stolen piece of bread, a door slammed too loudly, or a comment overheard. I wrote little notes to my friend under the door. We laughed at secrets that traveled faster than anyone thought, recalls Marina. Leningrad, 1960. Communal apartments were a stage for romance, comedy, tragedy, and ordinary life. Even small gestures, like offering a cup of tea, became acts of friendship, adds Pavel. Kazan, 1963. Communal life in culture. Soviet films, books, and plays portrayed communal apartments as symbols of the era. Comedies, dramas, and memoirs captured the humor, absurdity, and warmth of shared living. In films like Moscow Does Not Believe in Tears, the apartment is almost a character itself, notes cultural historian Sergei Ivanov. Moscow, 1989. Even those who never lived in a communal apartment could recognize its atmosphere from stories, art, and cinema. Every corridor, every kitchen had its own life, recalls writer Elena Petrova. Leningrad, 1985. The end of an era. By the late 1982, communal apartments began disappearing. Families received private apartments. After decades of waiting, some embraced their new independence, others felt nostalgic. The silence of a private home often felt strange after a lifetime of shared sounds. Moving out was freedom, yes, but also loneliness. The noise of neighbors was life itself, recalls Yelena Leningrad. 1988. Today, some communal apartments remain, especially in St. Petersburg. A few have been converted into museums with enamel mugs, old furniture, and handwritten notes on kitchen walls. Walking through these rooms feels like stepping into a time capsule. Conversations, laughter, and the whistle of a kettle seem to echo through the corridors. Memory and meaning. The legacy of the communal apartment is complex. It represents hardship and togetherness, conflict and solidarity, anonymity and intimacy. Only in a communal apartment did I truly understand the mix of human resilience and tenderness, recalls Victor. Moscow, 1965. For millions, it shaped a way of thinking, adapting, and connecting with others in crowded spaces. The communal apartment was not just a dwelling, it was a world noisy, flawed, sometimes frustrating, but deeply human.